Welcome back to episode 9, everyone. We're going into part 4 where we're going to have a look at a couple of other windowed functions that you may come across in your SQL journey. So let's head on in to SQL Server Management Studio then. Okay, let's change that database. And the first function, well, it's a pair of functions that sort of work together because one is the opposite of the other, and that is the lag and the lead function. Now, originally, before these functions were created by Microsoft, you had to write some pretty complex bit of sneaky code in order to get the same sort of functionality. And these two functions are pretty new, but Microsoft deemed it necessary to build these two functions in, and so they created the functionality for them. Obviously, a lot of people were talking about the need for these two functions, so eventually Microsoft did just that, and they put it in to some of the later versions of SQL. So then, what do the lag and the lead functions do then? Now, the whole idea behind lag and lead is to pull a previous or a future value based on your partitioning. Very simply put. I suppose it's best if we run off this query quickly and go over the results, and I'm sure things will start to fit into place, and then we'll look at how the functions actually operate. So in this simple query here, we've got a subselect, which all it does is we get the year of each order against which customer ID, and then we sum up the quantity versus the unit price as the order total. So for every customer ID, for every order year, we get a total value. Purely and simply, this is the output, so that for this customer ID in this year, we get this total order value there. And then we're going to use those results in an outer select there, where we have our customers' data being brought in. Right then, so all we're trying to pull is customer ID, the order date, which is actually the year, order year, and the total order amount as shown here. And then we're going to start introducing the lag and the lead examples. Now these are partitioning / window functions. As you can see, we've got partition by and the order by, but you'll also notice that we've got values creeping in between the brackets. So we do pass values into the function itself. Let's run the code off and explain what's going on here. So if we look at these results for customer 1 in particular, we could see that the order date, we've got 2013, 2014, 15, 16. So for all the years that customer 1 has made any orders, we get the total value here. Now the first one we look at is the lag with a 0 here, which means effectively that we want to pull what it is at that date and time. So either the order total there, which you can see is 80k, or we can use this rather lengthy functionality there to do exactly the same thing, and that's with a 0 here. Now the next one we're going to look at is the previous year minus 1. So all we're doing here is we're lagging behind by one partition. As you can see, we put a comma 1 in there, and you can see that for 2014, what we're doing is we're pulling the 2013 data, i.e. the 80k, we're putting it in there. So against 2014, you can say that the previous year in 2013, we had this value here. Now if you look at 2013, for example, there's a null against that value, which means that there's no data for 2012, so we then return nothing, i.e. a null. Simply no data. And of course in 2015 we're looking at 2014's data, as you can see there, that gets brought down there. And then for 2016, our last year, we're bringing in 2015's data, as you can see there. So all it does then, within the functionality itself, is pass in these values. So this is the order total that we want to look at, and we then put a comma and we say how many partitions, either lagging or leading, that we want to look at. So in this case with a 0, we're not looking at any partitions, which is why we're pulling the exact same amount. However, if we put in a 1, it means that we're going to look 1 year behind in this situation. So one window, one partition behind for what we have currently, which is why we bring those values there. Now we can also look at 2 partitions behind. As you can see here, we've got 2 partitions. So in 2015 we are pulling the 2013 value, which is 2 years behind. As you can see, we're bringing it in there. And of course 2014 and 2013 minus 2 years is 2012 and 2011, which we don't have data, so we're pulling nothing there. Now as you can see, there is a third parameter that we can pass into the function, and that is what to default when we have a null. So instead of returning a null like we had with this one here, we can put what to return in place of a null. So it's kind of like the isNull behavior there. As you can see, we're pulling zeros there. So you can pass in 3 parameters: the value that you want to actually see and you want returned, the amount of partitions you want to lag or lead by, and you can also put a comma and then a default value in place of a null. So that's quite easy there. So that's the lag for you. Now the lead, it works in the opposite direction. So if we lead, in this case, by 1, then we're looking at future values. So in the case of 2016, as you can see, there's a null because we don't have any data for 2017. However, on 2015, we have a value of 11,000, which is our value for 2016. So we're bringing it there. As you can see, 2014 we're pulling the 2015 value, and 2013 we are pulling the 2014 value. So it's kind of like pulling a step ahead or a step backwards, for example. It's all based on your partitioning here. In particular, the order by part, as you can see there, because it's all about the order date. We're just partitioned by customer, hence the reason why we get our different customers in customer blocks, but our order by is where all the magic really happens. Now, as you can see, it can get a little bit confusing. For example, if we change this to descending and we'd run it off again, then our previous year -1 looks exactly the same as our future year +1. All those values are exactly the same. So it's quite important to remember which function to use, the lag and the lead, and what happens when you have an ascending or a descending order by. In addition to that, if we say we want to do a lead -1, which effectively becomes our lag +1, and we try to run that off, SQL Server doesn't like that. It says it cannot be a negative value. So we can't put negatives in there. However, as we've just seen, we can put a descending against our order buys. So to stop yourself from getting really confused which function to use, what I simply do is keep the order by as is in the ascending, don't start mixing and matching, and just simply use lag or lead. and check your results if they make sense. So for example, if we then run off this bit of code here, which just has customer 1 and the order total for those years, we can then have a quick check at our results. So we'll run them off together, bring that up, and you can see for customer 1, for those dates, it's matching as well. And on our first lag here, we can see that these values here match those values there with the years as well. So that's just a quick check to ensure that our lag and lead functions are actually working, and we're not going the other way around. Simply by writing this code, which is pretty much the subselect here, ordered by the order date, and that's all I've done, is make sure that the lag and the lead are actually working in the right direction. As we've seen, it can be easy to confuse the two. So on the rare chances that you will have to use the lag and lead, then you know how to check your data and make sure you're going the right direction with the lag and lead, and keep it simple pretty much. As with all partitioning functions, we can simply write it as well, putting the functionality within the actual column itself. So the actual function there, we've got our sum, we've got our year built in there, so there's no subselect. We're stripping out the sum and the year and putting it within our actual windowed functions there. If we run that off, we get pretty much exactly the same results. There we go for customer number 1. And also that and pretty much that are exactly the same things, which kind of makes the comma 0 redundant. However, it's still in there because logically that works fine. So it's up to you when you write your code if you want to put it in as a CTE or a subselect, just to strip out the functions here, the aggregate functions, etc., and simply bring them into an outer select. Or you're quite happy to write your code pretty much like that. But that's all the lag and the lead does, in essence, is depending on your order by, it will either jump ahead or look behind however many steps you put into your parameters that you pass back into the functions themselves. And as we've seen, it can get a bit tricky to find out which way the lag and the lead work according to your data. So let's have a look at a quick scenario, and we can test your skills on the lag and the lead, see if you've grasped the concept. And it doesn't matter which way you do it, subselect, CTE or not, we'll have a quick look and see how you go. So the scenario is that the sales team is looking to do some year-on-year comparisons for all of our customers based on their total invoice values. You need to supply the following information: customer name, customer category, and the total invoice amounts for 2016, 2015, 14 and 13 in one row per customer. So that way the sales team can have a look at one customer and compare all their values over the year. So you might have to do quite a few lag or lead functions going in to build up this data for the 4 years, and then possibly put it in an outside select in order to just select the rows that you want. But first things first, build up your lag and lead functions, choose which one you're going to use, have a go at that, build in your partitions, etc., and then have a look at the data, see if it makes sense, and then take things from there. When you're ready to give it a go, just pause the video, and when you're done, let's have a look at it compared to what I'm doing myself. Right then. So we're looking for our customer name, so let's bring in our customer here. That's the wrong table. We're going to call them C. Customer name. And next we've got to bring in the customer category. And that of course comes in from our customer categories table. Customer category ID. Category name. Okay, so we brought in the first two values here. Now, what are we going to do about these total invoice amounts for 2016, 15, 14 and 13? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply follow this method here, keeping the code short. Now, if you've done the subselect or the CTE, that's fine as well. But we'll see how we go when we look at the results. So the next thing we want are our invoice tables. So we've got invoices there. Customer ID, and then we also need our invoice lines, because that's where all our values are. Total invoice amounts, invoice lines, we'll bring that in. Invoice ID equals invoice ID. Brilliant stuff. What else do we need then? Probably need to start off with some sort of date so we can check our stuff. So we're going to look at the invoice date. And we're going to just grab the year from that. Invoice year. So we've got our years coming in, which is fine, and now we need to start thinking about our lag and our lead. So what I'm going to do simply is grab the first one here. If we've got the code written out, might as well use it. So we've got the quantity times the unit price. Does that exist in our table here? We've got quantity and we've got unit price. Now we've got extended price as well. That includes the tax amount. So why not? Let's just go for the extended price there. And you can, if you want, default to 0 if it's null. Well, up to you how you want to do that one. I'll just leave it blank for now. And first one we're looking for is the actual year amount. So we're going to leave that as a 0 for our first one. We've got customer ID. In there we're going to partition by the customer ID. You can of course partition by the customer name as well if you choose to. Order by, year, order date. So we want the invoice date instead. And we're going to call that year 0. Why not? Because that's the 0 year there, and we're taking the year of the invoice date as year 0. So that is for our first one. We simply change this 1, 2 and 3 because we know that there's 4 years in total. Starting from 0, there's 4 years. So we're going to do that. It's year 1, year 2 and year 3. And of course, as we've got a sum in there, we need to take all the columns that are not part of the aggregate function. And we're going to group by the year there. Let's have a look and see what we get. Customer ID is invalid in the select list, so we'll just change it across to customer name instead because we've got it there already. And there you go. Here's our customer name. Here's their category. Yes, 2013, 14, 15 and 16. And in 2013, here's the value. As you can see, the lag is working quite well there. So we've got the data that we're after. But we only want to pull this line here where the invoice year is 2016. So what we're going to do is simply put this in an after select. So we're going to use it in a sub-select, and again, you could do this as a CTE, that's fine. We'll go and call that A, and then we're going to say as 2016, let's get the number right there. Equals 2015, 2014, 2013. Invoice year equals 2016, and of course we don't need the invoice year, but we can check that it comes across anyway. So let's run that off, and there you have it. Just one customer, just one category. We've got the invoice year of 2016 only popping in, and there you can see in 2016 that was the total invoice amount. 2015, 2014 and 2013. So we've got a total of 663 rows, all for the customer, and you can see some nulls creeping in there, which you could of course replace with zeros if you wanted to, using that third parameter. But here you can see they only had invoices in 2016, but the previous years they didn't have any at all. Here, this one had 2016, 2015, but no invoices in 2014 or 2013. That's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward. Quite a lot of thinking and involved work to pull out these lag and lead. But once you've done one, as you can see, you can simply copy and paste, change a few values here and there, and off you go. So how did you do with that one? Hopefully you got something similar. And of course the key thing is your results. If you got the same results, then that's all good. So quite a few things to think about with the lag and the lead. Again, not a regularly used function. It's quite rare. I've only used it once or twice myself, but in certain situations it can be extremely useful. Just remember the way the lag and the lead works. Your order date, you're putting in the value you want to check, and the steps, either forward or backward, the amount of steps based on your order by, and of course you can also partition your results as well on top of it all. So that's the lag and the lead function for you guys. I'm going to stop the video there. We've got one more function to have a quick look at. It's quite a rare function, but it's worth having a quick shifty on that one and then just seeing how it works so that you know if you ever come across it, you'll know what to do with that. So everyone, until the final video of episode 9, until I see you then, everyone have a wonderful day.